you got Vladimir Putin supposedly driving around in Ukraine, in territory that the Russians have grabbed. And then you've got this kind of new axis of evil that's developed now with Russia, China. Should be on high alert on that one. And then on top of that, the common denominator seems to be Iran. Wes?
Yeah, the world is in a dangerous place, and sometimes we're a little oblivious to it. It reminds me of reading history. Of course, we weren't around then, when the Empire of Japan and Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini were signing pacts and agreements with one another. No one thought that war and violence would come to their doorstep, and of course, we had World War II. What's going on now? You have Russia, which of course has invaded Ukraine. President Xi is in Moscow today, meeting with Vladimir Putin. But 2 months ago, they signed an agreement that they called a forever friendship, in which in that agreement, they said their goals included challenging the United States as a global power, NATO as a cornerstone of international security, and democracy as a model for the world. That is what Xi and Putin are going to challenge. China has yet to condemn the invasion of Ukraine. And then China just this week are completing, China, Russia, and Iran, for the first time ever, joint military exercises. China, of course, worked last week to establish a new relationship between Saudi Arabia and Iran. China signed a 25-year friendship agreement with Iran last year. We have a new axis of evil. These three countries, Russia, China, and Iran, that have agreed to cooperate with one another, and each of them stand in direct opposition to the values, the freedoms, the rule of law that the Western world stands for. We are in a precarious spot with these three countries.
But if we were a strong country, we know that the forever friendships with the Chinese could be gone in a day.
Right.
And these 25-year pacts with Iran could be, if we were strong enough, we would be able to. We'll talk to Rick Riddell about this tomorrow, because he talks about this, like how our diplomacy has failed. Everything is war, war, war. Even the State Department is like a war machine.
Right.
Instead of getting so tough that, what the Chinese say, maybe it's not a good idea.
Because diplomacy can be, listen.
The Saudis are mad at us too, so they've said, we'll partner with Iran. That used to be our major hedge against Iran, was the Saudis.
Yeah, so, Benjamin Disraeli famously said that, diplomacy can be war.
Well, we have power, Jay, to short of war, to confront these countries, to take a stand, to be firm and strong. We are the most powerful nation on earth, not only militarily, but economically.
But there's also an interesting factor here. The common denominator of these axes is Iran. So it used to be Russia, Syria. Yep. That was causing the Middle East problem, and then Iran was the anchor. Now it's Russia, China, and Iran.
Anchor with China.
So, but the thing is, Iran is still a factor. Even here, they are a player, and that tells you the
interesting
failing diplomacy.
News out of Iran too is the Revolutionary Guard has gone to the Ayatollah and said, "You better knock it off." So they were instructed.
What does that mean?
Well, remember the protests have continued there, and they killed the one protester, and then the Ayatollah and his religious council instructed the Revolutionary Guard to fire on the people, continue firing on the citizens in protest. The reason why there haven't been any more protesters killed in Iran. Interesting. I'm not trying to defend the Revolutionary Guard here. The Revolutionary Guard has stood up to the Ayatollah and said, we're not going to fire on the people because they want to stay. They're a business, ultimately, and their job is to protect the revolution. And if they have to overthrow an Ayatollah, they will. Now, we haven't seen that before because there's only been 2 Ayatollahs, but they've now gone to the Ayatollah and said, defied his orders, and there was an assassination plot against him by the Revolutionary Guard, but no arrests made.
What do you think this means?
I think they would much rather be in business with China than be killing their own people if they can stay in power.
Well, and economically, the Iranian government and the people are suffering because of sanctions, because they've been so isolated. And here again, that's where the United States, if the rest of the world will follow our lead, and if we have the will to do it under this administration, we can make China, Russia, and China pay such a huge economic and commercial price that it has the potential to change their behavior.
But they must love this banking crisis.
Of course they do.
Because we sanctioned all of their banks.
Let me tell you what else they love.
Destroy all their banks, and they didn't fall. Because the Chinese came in and propped up the Russian banks.
Right. So, of course they love this banking crisis. Let me tell you what else they love. A DA in Manhattan going after a former president. Let me tell you what else they love. Anything that makes us look like a third world country. And that's the problem with all of these things. All of these things make us look
like... Run on banks, bank failures, bailing out billionaires who were running away, George Soros, the DAs, all this stuff.
A president, a former vice president being, investigated by the FBI for documents. I mean, all of this is our standing globally has weakened. And then Putin's driving around, or a Putin lookalike, one or the other, around Ukraine.
Oh, yeah. He's going to the area that Russia has occupied, much like a criminal goes back to the scene of the crime. This guy is a monster, and yet apparently he is riding around the Donbass region in a car driving himself, if it is truly him.
I will tell you
That
this.
is normal.
Yeah, he does drive himself. But here's the thing. The American people, I could tell you this because I'll tell you what the indicator was. People on the Ukraine war have about had it. They don't want to fund it anymore. Mm-hmm. You had the situation where President Zelensky asked to speak at the Oscars, and they said no, which tells you where that is.